Survival history is full of dramatic moments, last stands, daring escapes, heroic endurance. But when you strip away the storytelling, a colder truth emerges. Most people who survive extreme conditions don't do anything impressive. They do things that look dull, repetitive, and almost forgettable, and that is precisely why they live. The skills that actually determine survival rarely make it into movies, manuals, or viral clips. They lack drama, they lack spectacle, yet time and again, from ancient trade routes to modern battlefields, these quiet skills draw a hard line between those who make it out and those who don't. Why exciting survival skills fail when it matters most? Modern survival culture gravitates toward high-impact techniques. Fire by friction, emergency shelters built in minutes, exotic foraging knowledge. These skills are not useless, but they are rarely decisive. They assume energy, clarity, and time. Three things people lose quickly under stress. Historical accounts tell a different story. Survivors were rarely the ones performing difficult tasks. They were the ones avoiding unnecessary tasks entirely. They conserved energy, reduced exposure, and limited decision-making to essentials. In Arctic expeditions, soldiers and explorers didn't die because they couldn't start fires. They died because they sweated too much, failed to regulate pace, or didn't stop early enough to avoid exposure. None of those failures are dramatic. All of them are fatal. The unglamorous skill of managing effort. One of the most decisive survival skills is effort control. Knowing how hard to move, when to stop, and when not to push forward determines outcomes more reliably than strength or endurance. Historical travelers moved slower than modern hikers expect. They rested before exhaustion. They adjusted layers constantly to avoid sweating. This wasn't caution, it was physics. Sweat in cold environments becomes a death sentence. Fatigue reduces judgment. Judgment errors compound. This is why, experienced soldiers often appear conservative in movement. They aren't lazy, they are preserving decision-making capacity. Survival is rarely lost in one moment, it's lost through accumulated small errors. Camp discipline honestly mattered more than shelter design. Another overlooked skill is camp routine. Survivors didn't build better shelters. They chose better sites and followed boring routines once there. Camps were placed for wind, drainage, and visibility. Fires were kept small or well extinguished early. Gear was dried methodically. Food preparation followed fixed habits to avoid waste and contamination. These actions don't look like survival skills because they don't feel active. But, historical casualty records show that poor camps killed more people than enemy action in many conflicts. Survival often depended less on what you built and more on what you refused to tolerate. Navigation habits beat navigation tools. Many people fixate on navigation tools, but history shows that navigation habits mattered far more. Survivors constantly oriented themselves. They noticed slope, water flow, vegetation changes, and wind patterns. They didn't wait until they were lost to navigate. They navigated continuously. When maps or compasses failed, those habits kept people alive. And, when tools were available but habits were poor, people still became lost. The skill wasn't knowing where you were. It was honestly never letting yourself not know. The discipline of stopping early. One of the most counterintuitive survival behaviors is stopping before you need to. Early travelers stopped to camp while they still had energy, light, and options. This looked inefficient, but it saved lives. Pushing just a little farther accounts for countless historical deaths. Darkness, weather, or injury transforms manageable problems into fatal ones. Survivors learned to stop early, even when it felt unnecessary. This skill feels, well, a bit boring because it's preventative. You never really see what it saved you from. Why social discipline mattered as much as individual skill? Survival was rarely a solo effort. Groups that survived the longest enforced dull, sometimes unpopular rules. Ration control, noise discipline, fixed routines, shared labor. Groups that allowed individual preference to override routine suffered fragmentation and conflict. Hunger and fatigue, they just amplify personality flaws. Discipline kept friction low. This is why military units emphasize routine even outside combat. The boredom is, well, intentional. It actually prevents chaos. How to relearn the skills that actually matter. The most important survival skills are habits, not just techniques. They really have to be practiced in ordinary conditions because they don't activate under panic unless they're properly ingrained. Practice stopping early. Practice regulating clothing before you start sweating. Practice setting camps deliberately, not just conveniently. And practice constant orientation, even on familiar ground. None of this feels impressive, but you know that's the point. Survival is not won by dramatic action. Honestly, it is won by refusing to create emergencies in the first place. History shows this relentlessly. The people who lived weren't the most skilled. They were the most disciplined in doing boring things well. If you value this kind of historically grounded survival thinking, go ahead and subscribe. Share this with someone who believes survival is about flashy skills and keep these lessons alive. The skills that save lives rarely look like they matter until they're all that do.